10-4.
He's ready. I'd like to call to order the special city council meeting. The date is January 24th. The time is 6:07 p.m. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Chairperson Douglas Lawson,
Here.
Chair Pro Tem Shirley Lanier,
Here.
Councilperson Chadwick McCoy, Councilperson Kashaba Miller Anderson, Councilperson Julia Votel, City Manager Jonathan Evans, Acting City Clerk Deborah Hall McCullough is present, City Attorney Don Nguyen.
Here.
You may proceed, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. If we can have a moment of silence followed by a pledge of allegiance led by Pro Temp Lanier.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have any additions, deletions, or substitutions to tonight's agenda?
None from staff, Mr. Chair.
Disclosures? Motion to adopt?
So moved.
Motion been made and properly seconded. Madam Clerk?
Councilperson McCoy,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Lanier, Chair Lawson,
Yes.
unanimous.
Going straight into the agenda, discussion deliberation, item 12.
This is item 12A, moving City Hall from the currently proposed site to another site to be determined. Mr. Chair, we do have public comment cards on this item. The acceptance of the cards is closed.
Thank you, Mr. Evans.
Mr. Chair and members of the board, this meeting was coordinated through the office of the mayor, so I will turn the presentation over to the mayor.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Ronnefelder?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Evans. The reason I called this meeting tonight was two reasons. To discuss a collective body, or as a collective body, our thoughts on Broadway site for the City Hall. I know in the past we moved it, and at that site, but I want to make sure before this ITN goes out that we are still a collective, or we have a collective view about it. Secondly, to discuss the ITN in general. It's my understanding that all members of this body have not met or had the opportunity to share their ideas or their thoughts about the entire project. And as McCoy expressed concern during the last negotiations that the body had not been heard, and once the cone of silence is in effect, it's too late. So I'd like to endorse my colleagues in this conversation to see just where you guys are at about this Broadway project.
Thank you, Mayor. Comments from the board? Councilman McCoy, go ahead.
1 second, go ahead.
Councilwoman Pro Temp Lanier?
Yeah, I'm not really sure about the subject of the meeting. My understanding is that the property on Broadway or on Broadway is where the City Hall was originally envisioned for. Initially, well, in the very beginning, even at this point, I never wanted the City Hall on Broadway. So if this meeting is to have a conversation about where or not on Broadway, then I'll have that conversation. I met with the consultants yesterday in regards to the ITN that's coming out, and there were a lot of issues that were cleared up for me in regards to the City Hall item. One of those issues that I had was when I asked them about how the ITN would go out in terms of the different projects. I had very strong reservations about it going out as a group of projects, given that the marina deal and where we are with that, having a master developer and having all of these projects under one umbrella, I was not very sold on that idea. So having the conversation yesterday with the consultants cleared up for me that in terms of the whole project, in terms of the city hall, in terms of the E Avenue, in terms of the recreational facility, that they could be bidded on individually, that they did not have to be bid on the whole entire project. That gave me some very good comfort in terms of if a developer wanted to just do the recreational facility, they could just bid on that. If they wanted to bid on just the city hall, they could bid on that. So that gave me a little of comfort in terms of how this ITN would go out. Also, I understood that the developer would have the decision, or they could decide where the city hall would go with the backing of the council. So the understanding is that it doesn't have to go on Broadway, that it could go somewhere else. But if that is the case, then I don't have a problem with the ITN. I think that if a developer wanted to bid on a certain project, whether it be the facility, recreational, whether it be the city hall, whether it be the E Avenue project, that they would have the opportunity to do so. So that is my understanding of that. And I'm here tonight to get, I'm assuming, some feedback from my colleagues about what they don't like about it. So go ahead.
Thank you, Pro Tem. Councilman McCoy?
Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Jonathan Evans, this is going to be back in 2020, and I did take note of it earlier today. I think it was something that I seen that came from the Economic and Business Development Manager, but I think part of the issue, and I brought this up in 2020, we had an item that was brought before the board, and this was to authorize staff to go out with the RFP, and it gave the addresses of the locations. And what didn't make sense, and I'm literally looked at it today, I just don't understand how one resolution can do multiple things that are unrelated. And I sat here and I asked the question, do we really want to combine $1.5 million in pre-development costs, which in my opinion is an item of itself that should be solely that item? And I said, can we at least create a budget? The consensus by the board, they didn't support it. But also what this resolution did was authorize staff to move forward with a RFP for these development sites. As far as I'm concerned, those were two mutually exclusive things, and they should not have been combined. I even watched the video today, and for that same reason, I stand resolute in that position. We wouldn't be here today had we bifurcated those items. And I'm gonna tell you why. Right after that passed, it was a 4-1 vote. The city sends out a press release saying that the city council approved to vote to put City Hall on this Broadway site. When you look at the resolution, it didn't even say that. And that's why, Ms. Nguyen, I can't insist enough that it's important that we follow Florida statutes. A resolution should contain one item, not authorizing pre-development costs and authorizing the move onto Broadway. And my issue was solely about not moving forward with $1.5 million of blanket costs. The conversation went on and staff went on to say that we can get updates. I have no clue what we've spent in terms of the pre-development costs for $1.5 million, and that's been 3 years. So I certainly want to hear where we are on that. It's been my position from the beginning that I thought Blue Heron was a better option than to place the City Hall site on Broadway. But it creates even more confusion when you go back and look at that resolution. It really doesn't specifically say it. And I remember email exchange with you, you said specifically, you really don't even need a resolution to authorize the relocation of Broadway. I mean, authorize the relocation of City Hall to Broadway. And I'm just like so confused. Now we are 3 years later, and now questions and concerns have come out about whether or not that's the best, highest and best use of the property, which I would probably submit even more now that it's not. So I'm very much open to exploring new ideas. It's very interesting that we have the CBRE crew here. I would hope that we would revisit that and consider placing City Hall at a different location, because I don't believe that that's the highest and best use at that location, especially considering all the development that is already started to occur.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
To speak specifically to the contemplated ITN, the ITN provides for great flexibility with regards to the city's ability to look at what the maximum opportunities are with regards to all the parcels. The solicitation will allow for the developer or developers to effectively propose alternative locations for the location of City Hall. The ITN also will provide the flexibility that if the developer was to acquire another piece of property and said this is where they would like to site City Hall, they can certainly do that. The ITN also provides for a developer to put in for all of the projects or certain projects that they have the capabilities and bandwidth. The ITN also does provide the opportunity for the city to negotiate with multiple parties, effectively looking to leverage the best deal for the city. So what has been communicated from the board thus far provides for great flexibility. And so there is not a situation whereby the city is dead set on that particular site. It was discussed and there's been multiple conversations with regards to that being a site of a lot of interest, but we know the economics have changed. And in conversations that we've had with CBRE and in discussions that CBRE has facilitated with elected officials, that has been articulated that they themselves agree that that site should be maximized for its highest and best use. And so the document that is anticipated to be released does effectively provide for creativity from the development community to maximize the opportunities for the city. And obviously, you as the policymaking board will have the decision to make once the proposals come in, which proposal you like, what elements of the proposal you like, and then where you would like to effectively site such a facility. But it provides for the developer to come with some creative ideas for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Quick question to follow up with that. Mr. Evans, has CBRE met with all of the commissioners with their one-on-ones?
Mr. Chair, if you would indulge me for a moment, there was some time where I asked the board to consider a special meeting for the purposes of having this type of discussion. That unfortunately did not occur, and so we did facilitate on, or attempt to facilitate on multiple occasions, opportunities to meet with board members. So that those opportunities were presented to board members, as well as follow-up opportunities if there was any additional questions. Staff as well as CBRE have been available at board members' disposal to answer any questions they may have concerning the ITN or the components contained as part of the process that staff is recommending proceeding forward with.
So I guess that's the follow-up. You did give a lot of information, but I guess has CBRE met with all the commissioners?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Sir.
I don't want to get into the specificities of which elected officials attended meeting, which elected officials did not attend meetings. Meetings were offered to all of the elected officials, and they were available at any time to talk about the public solicitation.
And I guess the reason is because some of my colleagues always state that we cannot ask these questions outside of the sunshine. So I don't know if my colleagues have met or not met. And the confusion, because I had the conversation with CBRE, and one of the conversations was that I was the main advocate for moving City Hall to Broadway. That was 4 years ago. That was because I wanted to spur growth, development, and activate Broadway. After my meeting with CBRE, we were very clear that that location, as Councilman McCoy said, would not be highest and best use for city facilities. I've been completely stood against Found Care's move there, not because of the clinic, but because of us not maximizing that parcel of land. So that hospital that's going on the north end, I'm very excited to support. But the property on Broadway, I want to make sure it's clear what direction. I'm confused as to why there's so much confusion with the dais, but then having this group meeting and the discussion is why I thank the mayor for hosting this. So we can have clarity as to what's going to be the direction of where this ITN is going. Because I don't want this ITN to go out and it blow up like it did last time. And then we're the ones that's answering the questions. I spent the latter part of last night and today answering questions and concerns because there was miscommunication and confusion from my staff. So I'm the one playing PR and communicating with everybody outside of our regular general meetings. So while we're in this meeting, I wanted to be clear with who had the meetings, who did not, and where's the direction of the ITN going before we have any discussion, because it seems like everybody's on different pages. I understand that the parcel is not going to be City Hall because that's not highest and best use, but I don't know what the ITN is going to clearly state. First concern. And then the second concern is I didn't realize until today that developers could just bid on pieces of it, because I know that we had talked about different options. So I don't know what the final details of the ITN will be. And I know that they still have a draft. But if they can only develop or bid on separate or individual options so that smaller developers can participate, or that we can have one mass development, what happens if these developers from across the country only choose to bid on the parcel that has the highest and best use and most value? If they can only bid on the parcel on 22nd Street, what happens to our city facilities on 600? What happens to the Parks and Rec site? What happens if they decide that they don't want to bid on the rest? If the intent of the ITN is to get development across the entire city and developers aren't given the demand to bid on everything, we're put into a position where we're not getting the maximum effort out of this ITN. And the last concern is our parks. Our park facilities is put into the ITN. There was a conversation where our ITN has not been addressing the parks because they would prefer to take it out of the ITN because we haven't secured the land with the school district. We can't continue to have these discussions of all this development housing up and down Broadway, and we haven't addressed the parks in our community. Councilman McCoy was adamant that he's not going to support. He was the one vote when we talked about this, because I went back and watched a video that a resident sent to me. He was the one vote that did not support the actual police station going at that location because we didn't have clear direction. We want clear direction, transparency for our residents, and I'm tired of answering the questions that my staff should be answering for me, or a publicist should be answering for us, or anybody besides the elected official that should know all the information. So the fact that there's confusion here, that is what's causing for the heartburn with me, even sitting up here on a day off. So if we can get some clarity on just those 4 concerns that I do have follow-ups after my colleagues if they want to opine on this. But Mr. Evans, if you can address any of those.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of any misinformation that has been articulated from staff, and certainly staff has made themselves more than available to answer any questions board members may have with respect to the solicitation. To speak on, what happens when or if somebody submits, invariably through that process, those submissions will be reviewed, and there will be discussions with the proposers as it relates to their submissions, and then there will be analysis that will be done, and then ultimately items will come back before you all as a policymaking board to make a decision. I can't speculate how or who or what persons are going to effectively bid on. Is if they bid on those items, we will have our consultants run the numbers and run the calculation to effectively try to structure, in essence, what the best deal is for the city moving forward. And so that's where staff stands on the particular issues. CBRE can provide some additional clarity with respect to what's provided for in the solicitation. And I wouldn't, as part of the solicitation process, I realize that this is a process that we do get the perspective and clarity from the board. But yes, there's some nuances that are grounded in what the procurement code calls for, as also statutes, and the process that we're following concerning an ITN, which gives us great flexibility to ultimately bring the best deal to the city and to the council for consideration.
And to follow up with that, Mr. Evans, if they are going to be addressing some of the concerns, understanding how can we actually judge and weigh apples and oranges when it comes to somebody responding to just 22nd, or somebody responding to the entire package, or somebody responding to just the park. So I want to have clarity, because I just don't want us to waste any more time. That last solicitation that went out was residents, this board was just very frustrated. The fact that we went through all those steps, the solicitation was not done perfectly. We didn't have any insight. We don't review some of the solicitations before they come out. And when they come back, it's not the pleasure of the board. And then we've wasted 6 months to a year. So I'm glad that we're having this workshop to discuss the parcel of Broadway, but I think the bigger picture is making sure we have clear direction from this board, which we've tried to, whether some commissioners did or didn't. I had a meeting. I'm gonna put on the record, I had a meeting. I was clear with my opinion, and I've seen some of the insight and direction. Now, has everybody given the same opinion? And then also, now I'm getting more clarity that there's going to piece the parcel together where certain people can bid and certain people cannot. I'm not necessarily supportive of that because that was the same issue we had previously. So I just want clarity. And Mayor, I think you wanted to jump in. Did you have something? I'm sorry, Mayor.
Well, one question. Thank you, Chair. When does the board have the opportunity to make the decision? I mean, it's not going to be like the OHLA where the board gives a directive and then staff makes the decision to suspend or cancel that negotiations, which I'm concerned about shortlisting, right? Uh, I'm going to indulge this board in just saying, let's take the shortlisting out and let the board pick. If it's 15 candidates, let the board pick because, to have trust in the board, I think nobody knows like this board, no developer knows like this board where stuff should go. Now, and I think it should be a workshop where we look at all of our sites and let us decide where we want stuff to go because we've been down this path before, saying let the developer decide. Well, the developers typically don't even live here, so they can't tell us what's best to go where. I think this board needs to take a stand, and you guys, this is why you're elected, right? To make those tough decisions, and then you say where you want stuff to go. I think the way we've been doing it is kind of backwards, and we're giving staff all the responsibility along with developers to make that choice, and we're going to end right back up in this place. And to just piggyback on you, Mr. Evans, I said before when the OHLA deal didn't go through or whatever, that developers are watching this. And I think it was more on our end. What ensures me and us that that's not going to happen again? That we get down this path and staff is saying, well, we don't, they're not responding like we want them to respond. And then as Councilman McCoy is like, we had no say or they had no say because, they're outside the cone to make those decisions. So how do we make sure that doesn't happen again?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please, Mr. Evans, go ahead.
Certainly, and nobody wants to, speak disparagingly about any of the developers that we've ever had a relationship or discussion with. But I can assure you, Mr. Mayor, through the process with the previous proposal, it was not for lack of effort on staff's part to help try to resolve that particular matter and move forward. But clearly, we have moved on, and we have a new entity that's with us, CBRE, that has vast experience with regards to these types of solicitations. So I will ask if somebody from the CBRE team can kind of talk through the submission process and effectively what this board would see. But I can tell you that invariably the developers are going to come back with proposals that effectively leverage the value of the asset and can definitely go to market and get financing. And so you may have some flexibility with regards to where facilities are sited, but realize that they are looking at it from a different prism and what the capital market is going to provide as it relates to access to cash. And so there is going to be a pretty thorough analysis that they're going to provide you that provides the rational basis for where those facilities are. So I'll turn it over to Leanne and her team from CBRE to provide a little bit of context and address any questions the board may have.
Leanne Korst from CBRE. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I have a full team here with us, so we're happy to answer any questions you have. I want to start, though, by saying that we had a pretty phenomenal turnout this afternoon at the developer workshop. We had, I think, probably about 90 people in the room, another 20-ish online. And so that interest in Riviera Beach, I think, is very heartening and encouraging at the start of a project like this. Our goal is to run an open and transparent process in which we foster competition. And we had a great amount of local participation today. We also had folks that flew in from other parts of the country with an interest in Riviera Beach. So a couple of different things. The way the ITN is currently drafted contemplates the fact that you all had previously considered placing City Hall on the Broadway site. However, Since we met with you in November and since you approved our contract, we've been diligently working and doing market research, et cetera. And we looked at your weighted population center. So we looked at the population of Riviera Beach, where your residents live, and what would provide the best citizen access to City Hall and these very important civic uses. And the weighted population center is just to the west of the Blue Heron sites. So for all of the reasons that Councilperson McCoy and the chairperson mentioned earlier, in terms of Broadway, we do believe that the highest and best use for Broadway is not City Hall, and that by placing City Hall on the Blue Heron sites, you're also providing access to citizens in a more convenient way, whether it's surface parking, whether it's ingress and egress, whether it's just being closer to your weighted population center. So part of that too is you want the highest and best use from Broadway because you want the revenue from Broadway to help fund or offset the cost of your municipal complex. So we, as we've shared before, we have issued literally hundreds of ITNs on behalf of government agencies. And the way that we structured the ITN draft, and it is still in draft form, obviously for reasons like we're talking about tonight, provides for developers to either bid on Broadway or Blue Heron or accommodate or both or a combination thereof. So it's not intended to create confusion. What it's intended to do is maximize competition. And a lot of the criteria used to select the developer is the same for each: experience, comparable projects, the financial ability to perform, what the project design is. And so the selection criteria, whether it's one or multiple developers, is oftentimes very, very similar. Now, there might be a separate section for selection criteria for City Hall because that is a very specific use, just by way of example. But our goal is to create and foster competition, give you all some choices when the responses come in, and then it's up to you all to decide what your priorities are. But we do think it's important for the market to speak about Broadway versus Blue Heron. It's our professional opinion that City Hall makes sense where your new fire station is going up, and there could be a TOD with the rail. But I'll stop there, see if you have any questions for us, and also ask my colleague, Mike McShay, who runs our national public sector practice, if he has anything further to add.
And thank you for those comments because today's presentation and today's event was well attended. It was a great representation. So I think tonight is more of just for clarity for the board before that we continue to proceed, because we've had a lot of a lack of clarity when it comes to some of these solicitations, and we just don't want the same antics to go on. We want just to make sure we're all on the same page. And I think Mr. Evans has done a good job of trying to engage us with CBRE. You guys did a great job. I think the confusion is, what is it that this board wants to see? What are we going to proceed with in regards to getting this solicitation out? Because this is the largest solicitation the city has ever done. So to combine it, to piecemeal it, to separate it, I still don't have clarity of fostering development, how that really actually gets development done in our community if all the responding bidders only focus on the highest and best use of commercial or residential use. Is that going to get our parks built? Is that going to get our city hall built? Is that going to get Avenue E addressed? So there's a little bit of lack of clarity from the meeting that we had, from the conversations with Reimagine, and from today's dialogue. So it's just being very transparent with our residents and with the board. So when it comes before us in the next 60 to 90 days, we're prepared to make a real vote based upon what we asked for.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Mike McShay. I lead CBRE's public sector practice for state and local government in the United States. So we represent everything from New York to Los Angeles to Riviera Beach and Miami and everything in between. So I will just tell you, we're very excited to be here tonight. And, I see a lot of these offerings, these invitations to negotiate. Today was one of the most remarkable attendance of any RFP, any ITN that I've seen across the country. It shows me that there's tremendous developer interest in what you all are offering here and what the opportunities are for a transformational project. And so I think you all should be incredibly proud of your city and pleased with the response that we had today from developers, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, from all over the country. As Leanne mentioned, our responsibility is to foster competition. Okay. And I think we saw today everything from local vendors to national vendors. There's going to be competition, and you're going to have more than one choice to make later on. Our job is not to select a developer, but to make sure that you have the ability to make an informed decision. And I think, Mr. Mayor, you mentioned that, how are we going to evaluate this? Maybe it was Councilperson McCoy. How do we evaluate these proposals when they come in? Well, I joke about it sometimes. Well, we see apples and oranges and squirrels, all right? And it's our responsibility to try to figure out how do we analyze these proposals to make sense of it. You will find invariably, okay, at least in our experience, that the best developer for whatever the product is, it's the new city hall, or it's a mixed-use community of different development, retail, office, residential, you will see that through this process, the best developer will present themselves. They will present themselves both in terms of design. They will present themselves both in terms of the best financial proposal for the city and the opportunity to realize a vision that I know you all have been considering for a long time, okay? Our job is to make sure that we present that information to you in a way that you can understand and appreciate and make a decision that you're comfortable with. And at the end of the day, it's my opinion, based on the attendance that we have here today, that you're going to have tremendous interest and that we're going to get you to a place where you can make that decision and feel very, very comfortable that you've made the right decision, not for today, but for 3 decades from today, and that your community and your constituents will feel really good about, and your children and your grandchildren will feel really good about the decisions you make today and going forward into the future. So I'm excited about the opportunity. I've not seen many like this with the kind of participation we had today, and I'm going to turn it back over to Leanne.
So, Mr. Chair, I think your question was, how do I know we're not going to get interest just on Broadway or just on Blue Heron? And from our experience, you have high-rise multifamily developers who might be interested only in Broadway. We also work, I think right now I have about 6 government headquarters facilities, whether it's a county or a city or Tennessee Valley Authority. You also have headquarters facilities. You also have developers who specialize and have an interest in government facilities. And so I think based on what we saw in today's workshop and based on our history in doing offerings like this, I think you're going to have a developer who does propose on just Broadway to do high-rise residential. I think you may have developers who specialize in government facilities and just bid on the city hall portion. So can I guarantee that? No, but through our experience over the last, couple of decades, I think you're going to have interest in both. And I think there are some developers who may bid on the entire package because they have a vision for Riviera Beach.
Thank you. Board
Welcome.
members? Councilwoman Pro Tem Lanier, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that kind of makes more sense to me. When you as I told you before in the conversation that I had, serious issues with everything in one package, with the city hall, with the recreational. But to be able to bifurcate those, for lack of better terms, for people who want to do each of those pieces is something I'm comfortable with. I think that fostering that type of competition is something that we need. And plus, people understand that what is happening here is fair. That is not something that is going to be an in round. It's not something that's going to be where we like this developer, we'll give it to that person. I don't want that to happen anymore. I want it to be a situation where developers come to the city of Riviera Beach. It is fair in how they are chosen, and the residents get to say where and how it happens. So I'm comfortable with that, but I just want to make sure that each step of this process, that not only is the council informed, but the public is informed as well about how this process is working because it is a big RFP. It is a big deal for the city. And I just do not want it to go the way of the marina. I want it to be something that can go and can get done and not sit here 10 years from now, singing the same tune about what we want to happen.
Yes, ma'am. So as I said earlier, we run an open and transparent process, and we would not put CBRE's reputation or name behind a process that was anything other than that. We want to foster competition. We want you all to have good choices, and I appreciate those comments. Thank you very much. We'll come back as often as you need in terms of updates on the process and any feedback that the public needs as well.
Councilman McCoy, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm sorry, what was your last name?
Corst.
Corset?
Corst.
Of course. So you speak of Broadway and City Hall now as two separate items. Why is that?
They don't necessarily have to be. You all previously gave direction that you wanted City Hall on the Broadway site. And the RFQ that was issued by the city, I think it was in October of 2022, contemplated City Hall going on the Broadway site. So we didn't want to ignore that past discussion that the city was considering Broadway. So the reason that we're talking about Broadway and Blue Heron is, for the reasons that I mentioned earlier, and that is to have the market dictate. If the market says, hey, you know what, the highest and best use of Broadway is mixed use residential, and we think the municipal complex should go to Blue Heron, and it's a better financial return to the city, we just want those options to be open for you all to consider.
Mr. Chair.
Councilman McCoy, go ahead.
Thank you. So, all right. The rhetoric, I'm not trying to go through all of that. I'm just trying to get very simple answers to questions. You're already speaking in terms of what we're trying to do. Had we not had this discussion, there seems to have been some sort of direction. I mean, even you explained, Leanne, if I can call you that
Of course.
the highest and best use was not on the Broadway site. So prior to this meeting, what was contemplated? Because I know I met with you guys prior to us approving a contract, but that was it. Ms. Evans, excuse me. Ms. Leanne, can you answer that? So what was contemplated?
You all...
We're creating a solicitation
Mm-hmm.
right now, so please share with me what was the direction that this was going. What I don't have is time to waste, because I'm telling you right now, I'm not even pleased with being here, because I was the lone person, and what I just really bothers me, because I think people don't value the time and effort that we put in, and it's certainly not to your fault, but I specifically want to know, because it seems like a whole lot happens outside of the meetings and we're not included, but there's this expectation that we should know. And to that point, that's exactly why the first solicitation got screwed up. The manager said himself that we, the policymakers, make the decision. Clearly, we're not on the front end making decisions, because you're already taking the direction that this is some kind of way to be bifurcated. We certainly didn't make the decisions on the last one when we had OHL to submit a proposal, and then I got a whole timeline that differs than what the city's timeline is. So please explain to me, what direction are you guys moving in? Under whose direction, and what's the expectation?
So CBRE's professional recommendation is that the ITN is structured so that developers can propose on either Broadway or Blue Heron and present those financial proposals back for you all to consider what is in your best interest.
Thank you for that answering that question. My next question is, when was that going to be offered to the board members?
I don't have an answer to that question.
So who
that
were
would
you
be
making
through
that
administration.
recommendation to? Was that going to be something formal that you sent forward to the manager?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Mr. Evans, please.
Like in every solicitation that has probably come out since the inception of city putting out proposals, that is a staff-driven process. And the direction that, or the professional recommendation that was provided by CBRE, and I believe was mentioned in the individual meetings that board members had, was that keep the proposal open-ended to allow for the developer to come back with a creative solution specific to the Broadway site. And so the deviation from what has previously been discussed is predicated on what the market conditions are and the discussions that have happened on this dais from this board in a numerous situations, specifically when it's come up concerning the property as it relates to Found Care. In addition to, I believe those particular conversations specific to, is the board willing to consider a different approach on the Broadway site, was proffered as part of those individual conversations, because that was a recommendation that CBRE said that we want to keep it open-ended. We think that this is a better solution. So staff said, yeah, in the individual conversations with board members, we can concede to that because it is a good idea moving forward. So that's when those conversations were happening, to get that input to make sure that all that is incorporated in what the overall solicitation
Mr.
would
Chair.
be.
Councilman McCoy, go
Mr.
ahead.
Evans, so how do we reconcile the two? What do you need board members for? If staff can make this decision on themselves. In fact, if I can go back to that meeting, I brought it up to you. I said, I'm quoted in the newspaper. It's in the newspaper, in the Palm Beach Post, that Mr. McCoy was the lone person that voted against City Hall. So what did we even have a meeting for? Why do you need a board member if you can sit here and go and do this behind the scenes within individual discussions? I mean, it seems like I want it to be clear, unequivocally clear, what my role is as a board member and what staff's role is. Because, I mean, what the heck, if you guys are going to sit here and decide when to send it out, what should it contain, and then you make a recommendation to us when you think it's okay, or what should occur, right? If it's the board's direction, then it should come back to the policymakers, unlike the situation with OHL. And then present us with the information and let us make the decision, Mr. Evans.
Mr. Chair, if I may, there have
Mr.
been
Evans, go ahead.
multiple times whereby we have tried to facilitate meetings with the board, and we as staff hear from the board that you do not want to have additional meetings. So we facilitated an alternative to get the information to the board. We certainly would love the opportunity to get the feedback in a public forum so we can go ahead and then do the work that needs to be done. But certainly it wasn't any situation where the staff was working behind the scenes to move this thing forward. Quite frankly, the staff has been responsive to even taking calls as early or as late as today to provide additional clarity with regards to that. And so we have tried to have those meetings, but those meetings have not been successful.
Board members?
So where are we now with this? I came to the meeting to have a conversation about where City Hall was going to be. We've decided that it could go either location. But the majority of the council said that, it should go back to where it was. But that is a conversation for another day. My position is that I just want to have a fair process and get as much competition and as much interest in these projects as possible. And to have an ITN that goes out and says that you can bid on each or all the pieces is something I'm very comfortable with, given the fact that if a person only wanted to do one piece, they could. I did not know that until yesterday. So that's a good thing. But I do want to make sure that the board is kept abreast, and the public, about how this happens, because it is such a big project and each step of the way, and especially when it comes to the methodology in terms of how you choose to bring, what you choose to bring to us, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I'm good with that.
Thank you, Pro Tem. Mayor Felder, Councilman McCoy.
Question, how do we compare the response for a short list if one person bids on one, another on two, and another on three? I don't agree with it being separated, Pro Tem, because they're going to take the best. What's going to make them more money? If you don't leverage it, who's going to come in and just do a recreation department? Right? I think our leverage is, if you're going to do our city hall, we want you to do everything, because if you got 5 bidders that do City Hall and nobody bids for recreation, how does that work? We don't have any leverage.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman McCoy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Mayor, great point. In fact, that's what I was going to say. So who project manages this whole system? I mean, as far as, if we have it bifurcated into 3, perhaps 4 different elements, and, given the scenario that one developer doesn't fulfill their obligations for whatever reason, like what happens? Like, obviously, I'm sure there'll be safeguards such as bonding and that sort of thing in place. But, I don't want to get halfway through a development like the city of Boynton Beach did. And then we sit here and now, we're all looking around to try to figure out how to now redeploy or do ITN to recomplete what was left off. So I'm of the same impression that if we're going to put it out, let's make sure that it's not bifurcated down to the granular detail that creates the situation where it becomes more of a hassle to manage a process like this.
Yeah, so when the bids come in, what we would contemplate is in the selection criteria is a separate box or category, if you will, for City Hall. So like I said earlier, some of the selection criteria will be similar or the same. Does the developer have the financial ability to perform? Have they performed and built other projects that are comparable, whether it's high-rise development or a city hall? So the selection criteria will be really clear. And there'll be a separate category for City Hall. And so what happens when the bids come in is we have a team of professionals, construction experts, financial analysts that will analyze all the proposals, we'll stack them up side by side, and then you'll have an opportunity to look at which proposal or proposals provide the best financial return to the city and accomplish your goals in the best manner. So we did the Miami City Hall as an example, and a project down in Pompano Beach with a new City Hall, not Boynton Beach, but Pompano Beach. And the selection criteria was a little bit different for City Hall. We're doing the same thing for Duval County Public Schools. And you look at the bids side by side in the financial return and the constructability and the ability for them to meet your project goals. And then you get to choose. I want one, or I want a combination of 2 or 3.
Excuse me. You get to choose. Who is that you're referring to? And you said when we look at them side by side, so you're assuming that your team is the evaluation committee?
Oh, no. We are your advisor. We'll do an analysis and we'll provide city staff and council our analysis so that you, the city, can make a selection. We're not an evaluator, we're an advisor to you, and so we want to present you with information so you all can make an informed decision.
Well, I would say we should be very careful with that, because if you're going to be an advisor, you're doing the role and function of government. You're doing a delegated function of government. If you're advising, I can tell you,
we're providing you with information so that you can make an informed decision.
Yes, and that's exactly why I would hope that this is in a very much open and transparent setting.
It is absolutely open and transparent. We are your technical advisors. We're doing the financial modeling. We're coming back to you and telling you where the development entities are deficient, if they are, where they're superior in terms of their proposal to you. This is our responsibility. If I may finish.
That's exactly what you can't do. Because if you're going to sit here and determine whether or not a proposal has some sort of deficiencies, you're more or less creating an evaluation criteria.
We're your technical advisor to do that, okay? And then we provide you the information. You look at it and make a decision about whether you like the proposal or not. Our job, the way that we look at it, and we do this across the country, we're there to protect your interests. We're there to make sure that you're evaluating each of these proposals, which can be very, very complicated. We're there to make sure that you understand the decisions that you're about to make, and that you're making the decisions on an informed basis and in your best interest, whatever your policy decisions are. If you want to make the policy decision that it should go on to Blue Heron or to the other site. That's your decision to make. Our job is to make sure that there's been sufficient competition, that you have the financial information and the other information that you need to make an informed decision. Then you're making that call. We're just your technical advisor. That's what we are. That's the role that we perform.
Thank you, sir. Mayor? Councilman? Pro Tem? Last question that I had. I know during the one-on-ones, we talked about the 35 acres for the fields that's currently owned by the school district, deed restrictive or actually the ownership there. What is going to be the plan with the engagement? Is that going to be involved in the ITN? Will that be pulled out? What is going to be our direction with that?
Mr. Manager, you're having conversations. I'd suggest you answer that.
Yes, so the way the ITN is structured is that it talks about that the city effectively is looking to partner up with the school district concerning the activation of those sites, whether it's the campus that's currently utilized by Inlet Grove or the properties between I and J, which is a smaller footprint. In conversations that we had with the school board member is that this conversation looks to be happening in March, where the district will talk about the possibility or feasibility of a Riviera Beach High School. And so our hope is that we would get more clarity from the district and district staff at that particular time. But the agreement that we're asking for the district to consider is an agreement that they currently have in place with slight modifications with the Village of Wellington that has the joint use and shared use of the facilities. And so our hope is that as we get further along in that particular process, we can shore up what would be effectively site control and move forward with that. But the language is going to provide clarity to the developer or to the proposers. This is obviously something that the city is working on with the school district.
Okay, so final question that I have is the bonds. We have bonds that are going to be incorporated into the discussion and dollars that are available. Do we have money available to contribute for City Hall, for the Parks and Recs? Because if these bonds don't pass, what happens to the ITN of the response and the financial or financing capacity? And what money do we have to contribute from City Hall? Because I know that we've had multiple discussions about available asset or dollars available previously. So before the ITN goes out, I want to make sure that there's not a clear direction for the development community, what money's going to go there, because the residents still have to make the final decision about the bonds that we're voting on in March. Plus, do we have money available for City Hall to contribute to the deal? Of course, we'd want them to build it for free, but I'm assuming that's why we want to keep all of the valuable land in the deal to negotiate the highest and best terms so City Hall can be built. So I just want to make sure that it's clear. I think previously we've just allowed for staff to kind of lead and guide the way when it came to certain solicitations, and a lot of the tough questions were not asked up front. So colleagues and myself would then receive information that was not necessarily the pleasure of the board or the will of the community. So it's having these conversations, having these constant conversations. So before it hits the streets, before we go into a cone of silence, we can know everything that's happening with it from A to Z. So in regards to the bonds, is my final question about the money that we have available for the solicitation that's going out. Is this going to be on the burden and on the backs of the taxpayers? Is the development community going to pay to build this? Or is this just going to increase their tax base?
With respect to the item that's contained on the agenda concerning the solicitation or the location of City Hall, the board did authorize that placing 3 bond initiatives on the ballot for voters to consider. If those items are successful, a portion of the bond proceeds will be allocated for the purposes of recreational investments in funding the master plan. So with respect to City Hall, there's monies that the city has concerning the surtax monies, and that money has been earmarked for City Hall. So wherever City Hall happens to be located, whether it's on Broadway or it's on 600 or 601 Blue Heron, that money does follow the particular project. So even if the developer chooses to buy another property for the siting of City Hall, the $20 million that is allocated for the surtax would go to that particular facility. So there is cash on hand for the City Hall campus specifically. The city roughly has about $55 million in borrowing capacity in the event that it needed to go to the capital market to facilitate the construction of any municipal facilities or any other infrastructure projects. And that's just on the city side.
So on the, Mayor, go ahead.
Just a question. Ms. Evans, have that $20 million, was that available with the last RFP also?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Ms. Evans, go ahead.
Yes, that $20 million has always been available as part of the.
That's why I'm concerned, because Randy Sherman isn't here, but he said that that money was not available, that the city had no money to put in City Hall.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Evans, go ahead.
I'm not aware of a conversation where Mr. Sherman said that $20 million wasn't available. I am aware of a situation where it was articulated in the discussion with OHLA that there was monies that were set aside for the purposes of pre-development costs and the like for the for that development project, but the $20 million has to be spent on City Hall, and that's provided for in when we did submit our surtax project as well as appropriate resolutions. So that money has always been available for that project.
Thank you, sir. Good. We're going to do tonight just general public comments. So residents, if you're here, please submit a card for general public comments. Because it was just discussion and deliberation, we're going to just do regular public comments. If there's no further discussion, I'm going to go straight to the public comment section. Public comment shall begin at 7:30 unless there's no further business of the City Council, which in the event it shall begin sooner. In addition, if an item is being considered at 7:30, then comments from the public shall begin immediately after the item has been concluded. Please be reminded that the City Council Board has adopted the rules of decorum governing public conduct during official meetings. It's been posted at the front desk, and in an effort to preserve order, if rules are not adhered to, City Council Chairperson may have any disruptive speaker or attendee removed from the podium, from the meeting, or from the building if necessary. Please govern yourselves accordingly. We're going to go ahead and close we're going to keep public comment open for the time being. But if anyone does have public comments to submit a card, please submit them. After we complete public comments, we'll be going into commissioner comments, staff comments, and then closing the meeting. Madam Clerk?
First, we have Margaret Shepherd, followed by Cindy March and Kendrick Wiley.
And residents, these are just general public comments, so you can't address anything that we're talking about tonight.
Margaret Shepherd, so you're saying we cannot discuss anything that you all
Just anything you want. These are general public comments, so anything you'd like to address, Ms. Shepherd. And please, Walter, start our clock back over.
Yes, give me some clarity because I'm not quite
Yep.
sure.
So for all residents that are here, this is general public comment. We're not doing comment cards for the item because it was just a discussion item. So if you want to talk about the item we discussed, or if you want to talk about anything in general, this is general public comment. So whatever you'd like to talk about. And you're welcome to speak about anything, Ms. Shepherd.
Margaret Shepherd, Riviera Beach. I'm deadly confused because I thought we were just going to talk about the removal or where City Hall is where we wanted to have City Hall. I think because there's not too many people here, I just think it's just ridiculous that you all continue this conversation without getting the general public in here. When you're talking about moving City Hall, I think that should be our decision, those of us that live here, not your all decision. You're the policymakers. I would like to see City Hall at 600 Blue Heron over there on 20th Street, 22nd Street. We're already bombarded with the boatyards. So now, and then St. Mark is coming, and now you're saying, oh, well, we're going to put City Hall there. I did ask the question about the parking. It is ridiculous here, parking. It is ridiculous at 600 Blue Heron parking. It is in a place where I think all the residents can get to on 600 Blue Heron. I think when you're making decisions like that, you should be now, I've been going all day talking about the bonds. People actually did not, well, they don't go to Lindsay Davis like me, and the feed is not up. So how could they know what was going on at 6 o'clock? I think this is a terrible move. I think you should just table this until you put it on a city council meeting so we can pack out the house and you guys hear what we really have to say. Should you field it out, have one person do it or whatever? I'm listening to the CVA, CURA. Never heard of it. ITN. You all better start telling us what you're talking about because I have no idea, none of what you all are talking about. We're in a bubble right now. At least I am. I don't know about anybody else, but I try to keep up with what's going on in the city I lived in. I wasn't born and raised here, but my parents were. And I thank you for bringing it up, Mayor. This is serious. This is real. You're talking about the bonds coming up. I mean, somebody said, did you come to the workshop? Well, how the heck I can come to the workshop and I'm out here peddling the bonds? Then you got the election. And if that seat is vacated and taken by somebody else, you guys are really in trouble because they might not see it the way you all see it. You have to be recognizant that the election is in progress. How does this individual feel? Does he feel like you? I don't know. I haven't had a chance to ask him. I'm asking you just table it and let's try to get clarity with the public.
Cindy March. For the record, the chairperson has stepped away at the dais. The chairperson has returned to the dais.
Good evening. We're gonna have to stop letting these big developers come over here, telling us what we need in our city and where they put it at. We need to stop letting one individual run this city because we voted you all in office. You all work for us. We don't work for you all. And if you want your seats, you should do better. Transparency is number one. I was on Facebook. People talk about social media, and Mr. Lawson, you can agree. How many feedbacks did you get today off social media? And I rebuttal because I come to these meetings and I tell the citizens and the residents, come to the meeting and let your voice be heard because we are the change and we can make a change. You have two people on that council board that's not even here, and y'all discussing about moving the city hall. You have a finance man, he's not even here. That's not good. That don't even look good. You put up these big old homes, $300,000 and call them affordable, and we can't even purchase none. They give you all a good presentation, but they're not for the city and the residents here in Riviera. We must do better. When we know better, we do better. And I thank you so much, the mayor, for bringing it out. Tragic, you keep doing what you're doing. Because one thing about it and two things for sure, you know your job and you know it well. They might not like your temperament, that they don't like mine, but I'm gonna call a spade a spade. And I am due to be corrected when I'm wrong. But one thing for sure, I know you all changed the language to fit y'all narrative to let these big developers come over here and do what the heck they want to do. Enough is enough. We're hurting here in the city of Revere Beach. The ones who get out and walk and knock on doors, it means a lot to me. I was grown up and raised right here in the city of Revere Beach, where I love to live, work, and play. But we're not going to have no place in Riviera to live, work, and play if we let Jonathan Evans and these big developers do what the heck they want to do. And we supposed to close our eyes to it. You all abbreviate. You all use big words so people won't understand. But I tell you, open up this meeting where everybody knows, because you had the meeting for January 22nd. Today is the 24th, and I found out 3 hours ago before the meeting. I even called over to City Hall when someone called me and said, Cindy, it's a special meeting. This is not acceptable for the people that get out and vote. All money is not good money.
Next is Kendrick Wiley, followed by Mary Brown, and then Tanya Davis Johnson.
How y'all doing? Good evening, Riviera Beach, and everybody who's viewing the city meeting today. I'm not here to complain, but just to, not saying that no issue needs to be addressed, but I'm here to introduce myself. My name is Kendra White. I'd like to announce. I'm a son of Mary Gamble, lawyer Wiley. I'm a third generation resident. I've been a resident of Riviera Beach for 35 years. Since I partnered with Marcos, I've been in the shadows, giving back to the community, from teachers, students, police department, fire department, summer camps, and the resident of Riviera Beach. So I came in today just announce that I'm gonna have nonprofit events in the future just to give back to my city that I grew and raised, my mom, they mom, and just get out there. I left my information with the clerk of Riviera Beach, and y'all can even follow me on Facebook, Instagram too. So yeah, thank you and have a wonderful night. All right.
Thank you for your comments.
Mary Brown.
Good evening, Ms. Mary Brown, Riviera Beach. As I sat here this evening, we must proceed somewhere. I thank Ms. Leanne and Mr. Michael for the workshop that they did today. That vastly says that it is a totally vast interest in the city of Riviera Beach. You 5 people that sit there, you are the governing board. Ms. Graham can't bring anything in the city here. I can't take anything out of the city here unless in you 5 people give clear, precise, structured. This is what has happened. You all are so wish-washed and sidetracked yourselves. You all have to stop that and stop casting the blame on everybody else. You are the governing factor in every city. And you sit here and you play that game blame. It won't happen. Not this year. This is 2024. And if we can move the things that we can move, let us move them. If we get clarity, Miss Ram know the games and stuff that's played in this city here. I got a briefcase over there about over 2,000 people. So see, this is a downfall here. You're not precise up there. You're not precise up there. Some are, and some just say the hell with it, whatever. This man or lady, whoever governs this city, they can't do anything without you all playing fiddle, because sometimes that's what you do. But you have to stick to the game plan no matter what. And we're going to have people that disagree with us all the time. I have never been in this city here, whereas every time when there's something to be voted on, you would not get the mass of people, but they would come to that voting box. You cannot. I attended the workshop over at Lindsay Davis. Residents, these bonds here, they cannot talk about them because they will get charged. It's new laws that are being made now. So what they are doing is they're trying to be informative. But residents, you have to do your part. Like Ms. Ram said today and yesterday. These things is critical. It's critical. Cities is built on bonds and certificates and not cash. Every city across the landscape, this is what happens in government. We have parlayed this city for centuries without doing the things that we need to do. So it is time to step up. Water is life. Police, this city doesn't even have a police department. Shame on us. You all are the blames.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Brown.
Tanya Davis Johnson, followed by Mrs. Williams.
Good evening, Mr. Chair Pro Tem, members of the board, mayor, city manager, city attorney. First, let me say congratulations on a successful event today. I'm not here on behalf of my office. I'm here as a citizen that just happens to work in small business. But when the notice came out, it simply said that it was going to be the fact that the city would be they'll be releasing an invitation to negotiate a large-scale capital project in preparation the city and its real estate partners is having a workshop to share the project vision with potential developers and local vendors. So when you read it that way, it doesn't appear that it was a community-based meeting or that the meeting was intended for residents to be there, but more so for a developer and vendor community. So I would just encourage you to be a little more intentional about the language so that members of the city, citizens can be prepared to attend because it was held at 2 o'clock. So if you were looking for citizens participation, for those of us that are working, we wouldn't be able to necessarily participate. So there should be some consideration about that. I also wanted to congratulate you on the successful um, Martin Luther King parade and the work that was done to beautify the city in preparation for it. But I came to you in 2023 asking you about the MLK corridor where there's a continuous row where there is no greenery and there is the rust stains on the wall. I've asked about having that cleaned. I've asked about having the walls cleaned. I've even asked about having shrubbery put in place to do as it's doing in the other areas, which is cover those stains where you don't see them, because a lot of money went into MLK. A lot of money went in there. And so therefore we need to really think about how we're going to put it on a schedule for maintenance, for beautification. Just as we put down the annuals along the parade route, we should have been doing that all along down that road. I think that we need to get out of the habit of preparing for the sake of presentation and just making sure that we are providing the same level of service throughout this city as is everywhere. So if you're going to put shrubbery down, let it be continuous. I wanted to bring to your attention, I don't know if you know, at the corner of MLK and Australian, the Inlet City sign was involved, I guess, in an accident. For months. For months, it's cracked. No one has addressed it. But we want to bond everything. We want to spend all of this money, but we're not doing the things that we need to do just on the day-to-day care of this city. So let's just think about that. But congratulations on that. We appreciate providing an opportunity for citizens and especially for your event today. The small businesses, the local small businesses got a chance to see who would be in the room and how they could be successful. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mrs. Williams?
Good afternoon, Ms. Williams.
Good evening to the council, the chairman, the mayor, the city manager, and all of you, God's wonderful citizens. I know you, I know you. I thank God for my being here. I think they was telling me y'all gonna move the city, put the city hall on your main thoroughway, Broadway. Okay, you're moving that. Okay, the new fire station over there, what you fixed in front of Tate. How many millions of dollars did y'all do to fix that and go build the other one over there? I think you need to just, where's Mr. Sherman? He's not here tonight. That's the budget man, right? We need to get all that straightened out about the budgeting. And as the lady said before, she didn't fight about this until 3 hours or something like that. You're having a special meeting. We should know about that. If you set the schedule for when the public can come, you should make sure that be known. I know you can have specials that come up anytime, but this is important. You're moving a lot of money around in this city. When you did Barracuda Bay, you took the pool and all the recreation stuff from Tape over there and put Barracuda Bay. Now you're gonna move Barracuda Bay over here. How much more money y'all gonna spend moving and taking around and nothing seems like it's gonna be stable in one place? You gotta stop that. Make sure you stop and look. I told you once before, if you want me to ride around the city and see things you need to do, I get a committee and we will ride around and bring it to you. We'll take pictures, video, and everything. Because there need to be some things done here in the city. I thank you for the council that came in, for year before. I'm glad for y'all up there, because God is a good God, and He's watching you, and me. Not only watching us, but our very thoughts. Don't think of you say something, but your thoughts will fall off. He got all that, and it's being written down in the book. I'm telling you, please start to fear God. Fear God. Fear God, because He's the only one that's speaking. We live and die. We the only one that's speaking. We can have our being and move. So please keep on account of this money and the situation. And sometimes those workers tell me, the ambassadors, I don't hardly ever see them on the west side. And sometimes the other people that work for the city, they say, oh, please, could you tell them to try to give us a raise? I don't know what you're doing if you're moving all this money. Get them people a raise so they can keep this city clean. Where it say to work, live, and play. What is it?
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Williams.
Next is Chandra Stringer.
Ms.
The
Stringer.
evening, council,
Good
to
evening.
chairperson, council, mayor, and Mr. Evans, and everyone else, almost in their respective places, like we're in church. But anyway, I'm Chandra Stringer. I just wanted to just stress a small concern in regards to just how communication happens. I understand that, everybody's doing more with less. I understand that, we should be going to the city's website, but just like Ms. Mark said, it was text messages that went by that in order for us to know that this meeting was happening. And I think it's a disservice to the citizens because of the fact that these are people's lives that you're talking about. You're not talking about a dog, you're not talking about a cat, even though some people value them more than they do humans. You're talking about somebody's life. And when you're talking about day to day living, handling stress, handling crisis, dealing with crime, and all of the mixture, we got to be a little bit more considerate. I mean, you have no problem posting photo ops and all of these great promotional things on your website, but when it comes to meetings and even the time, I'm like 2 o'clock in the middle of the day. Most people are working. Do you really want the citizens' input? Or you just want to check the boxes and say you had a meeting so you can move on to your own personal agendas? And I said this, and I'll say it every time I come up here. You can do and say, act, behave how you want to, but at the end of the day, you have a conscience. And then when you sleep at night, if you don't feel like you've served the citizens that voted you in office or the citizens that's paying your salary, shame on you. Because one day, whether you realize it or not, you're going to have to give an account for that. And I'm going to stand here flat-footed, 10 toes down, and recommend that you guys do a better job. I'm not complaining, I'm just explaining. Because you got text messages, you got uh, communications on Facebook and all of those things, and it shouldn't be. Give people the consideration that they are valued enough that they can plan their work schedule, plan time off to know about meetings so their voices can be heard. And this referendum, I'm not a homeowner any longer, but I still live in this city. And that's an additional $300 proposing 292 if you add up all of that. That's not including insurance increases, maintenance with all of this weatherization that's going on, and people are just saying, "Oh, just vote." Yeah, vote, but give people the opportunity. And the last thing is, everybody didn't go to college, so everybody don't know what an I-10 is. Everyone don't know what who the company is you're talking about. If you're gonna have intellectual conversations, get a glossary of terms so people can follow along accordingly. Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Evans, did you want to comment on any of the public comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair. With regards to the business development workshop, that was for a networking for local small businesses as well as the developers concerning the ITN, the intent to negotiate. But certainly, as we put out information concerning the proposal, we can definitely make sure that the information is a little bit more descriptive in what the city's trying to accomplish. Concerning the issues of the wall, I will get with the Public Works Director tomorrow myself and communicate with him to see what are some options and alternatives. And then with regards
If
to
you,
the
if you
sign,
could
we can
pause
get that.
one moment, Mr. Evans. It looks like two residents are, did you miss public comment cards? Okay, well, hold on, well, hold on one second. It's not 7:30 yet, so if you'd like to submit a card again, or if it's missing, I understand, so we'll go
Mr.
ahead and
Chair,
look.
they submitted cards for item 12A, but
Okay,
not
well,
general
we took all the
public.
cards just in general, so we'll go ahead and take
Okay.
your public comments, and then Mr. Evans, if you can, just finish up on those comments. So if you can just find those two items, if you'd like to give your public comments now, that's fine. And then Mr. Evans, if you can, complete those comments after they're complete. Thank you, sir. You guys don't go anywhere, she's gonna call you now.
Julie Logston.
Good evening. Hi, Julie Logston. I have a couple of questions. One with regard to the actual cost of the new City Hall complex, because what I read in the Palm Beach Post was $55 to $60 million. I know that Jupiter just built one for $27.4 million, a 42,000 square foot complex, Hurricane 4 impact tested. They just opened the very beginning of January. And if I look at the cost per resident that on average should be spent for a city hall, it would result in a building here that would cost us about 15 million. And I'm just trying to understand why we're spending 55 to 60 million dollars. I personally have a street that's like a roller coaster. When I go down my street, I have to go like this because it's in such disrepair. Okay, it's been like that for the 6 years I've been there. My rental houses on 25th and 24th Street, every time there's high rains or king tides, the salt water is in the yards. I'm worried about flooding because we don't have proper drainage. I have never once drank water from the tap in this city. I don't even want to give it to my dog. And yet we're going to go spend 55 or 60 million dollars on a new city hall. I don't understand our priorities. And, I think somebody needs to re-examine where we're spending our money. And we're spending $1.6 million on an RFP process before anybody's even approved the bids or the bonds. We kind of got the cart before the horse. That's my first point. The second one is we go ahead with these bids. My experience as a project executive and a financial manager for IBM for 36 years, when I used to run $100 million, billion-dollar bids, when we had to bid and there were pieces of it that we didn't have the competency to bid on, we had to partner because the clients required that you had to bid the whole deal. And if you can't bid the whole thing, then you get partners and you bring it. And you want to make sure you have separate prices for each piece, whether you bid the whole bid or parts of it, so that you have a way to compare those. So just to your point, Mr. Lawson, I think that's how I would approach this. And then the third thing I wanted to talk about was, I forgot. I think that was it. I know there was another one, but I have 8 seconds, so I will say thank you for your time, and I hope you guys will consider those points.
Thank you for your comments, ma'am.
Brandy Davis Balsano.
Welcome, Ms. Brandy.
Good evening. I'm a little distraught because of the shenanigans that just happened over here. I don't understand with the city when there are procedures in place and we've submitted a card and we suddenly say, okay, we're going to jump process and we're going to have general comments. I've already wasted a tree's worth of paper to check a box. Why not, if you're really going to stick to it, just say, hey, if anyone wants to come up here and check the other box on this card, we'll do it. Why is it that we just sit back in silence and then just assume that someone who submitted a paper no longer wants to speak? I think that is very odd and against customer service principles, and I just want to call that out. To this point, I would say I have two problems with the town hall. Not that we're building a new town hall, but that we're spending, I don't know, 50, 60, $100 million. I have no idea how much it is. But in any case, it seems way above our means, If we got 20 million, why don't we fit it in with 20 million, right? Why do we have to make it so extravagant? This is Riviera Beach. I think everyone has complained about the infrastructure, the fact that we live here and we don't see tax dollars going back into our streets. Why would we even consider putting a city hall on Broadway when that gives the city a water view? I would say the perception problem here is real, and I thank the consultants for bringing up the fact that it's not highest use, highest value, but I'd also say it creates a big perception problem with the city that I've heard since moving here, is that this city only cares about itself, and I know that not everyone does that, but I do know that that's the perception problem, and when you put out a press release that puts this like glass empire, right next to the water, municipal building, that's a little weird. I have to admit, that's a little weird. Now, I get the strategic argument that you're bringing in all the city workers and that might spur some economic activity downtown. Certainly pay yourself a lot and you'd be able to afford the lunches and the big tips. But I think that there are other uses, and I think the city needs to start living within its means. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, ma'am. And I apologize. Go ahead, Mr. Evans. Continue with the comments.
Yes, Mr. Chair. With regards to the Inlet City sign, staff will get that addressed immediately. And the cost for Fire Station 88, I believe, is $18.5 million. For the total project cost, when you ask for property acquisitions, probably $20 million. And then the roadway infrastructure, as the board knows, and I think I've mentioned it a couple of times, that we are doing a complete analysis of all our roadways to look at the water and sewer infrastructure, as well as the conditions of pavement. And once that analysis is complete, then we will develop and bring forward our worst first roadway redevelopment solution, where we will look to effectively address the roadway infrastructure in our community. Additionally, had a conversation with the Public Works Director about an analysis concerning some of the street lights in our community, and having the discussion with the board in the future concerning a light study to look at better street lights throughout our neighborhoods. And so that's something that will also couple with the roadway infrastructure. And the comments concerning City Hall, the facility that was cited, that was actually the city of, or the town of Jupiter, their police station, that was 42,000 square feet. With the City Hall that's being proposed, that's an item that we are going to wait and get the cost from when the development community comes back with their proposals to provide us with what those cost estimates are with respect to the intent to negotiate that will be placed out to the market, hopefully at the end of this month. And that concludes my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And discussion? City Manager?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Very briefly, we have our next community conversation and discussion concerning the general obligation bonds. That will be at 600 West Blue Heron at the Riviera Beach, the former Riviera Beach Police Department, from 6 to 8 p.m. So we're asking folks to come out and be informed concerning the municipal bonds. And that concludes my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
The 30th, January 30th.
Discussion by City Attorney?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Council committee reports? Discussions by the council and the mayor, starting with Pro Tem Lanier. Councilman McCoy?
Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Evans. Speaking of the general obligation bonds, I was just really interested in finding out who did these analysis or performance to estimate the cost of the increase based off of a $250,000 home. Surely there had to have been some sort of financial expert to do that, considering, or I want to know what the considerations and factors was that they considered, because number one, this doesn't even seem like this is statistically founded.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
Our finance director and I can have him provide the analysis to the board via email.
Okay, so my question is, who did it? Because apparently is suggesting that the $55 million bond would result in a $140 per year annual property bill increase based off a home for $250,000. So is this assumptions based on the current millage rate? Like I'm trying to understand because what's not exactly clear is does this assume the current 8.359 mils? Because certainly this is perfect information. This is spot on, but there's no factors or there's no assumptions that's included to let a person know is this assuming that we go up to 9 mils. I mean, this is just the worst public presentation I ever seen, and quite frankly, it definitely tells the truth. It just doesn't tell the full story. And if this is what goes on at those meetings, I can imagine nobody's going to even see this coming, because you can be assured with the monies that the county has levied for their general obligation bonds for the 200 million, in addition to what we're doing, which is probably 112 or give or take in that area, in that ballpark. Certainly, it's going to be more than $300 for a $250,000 taxable assessed value home. So I just don't understand, and this is really a disservice because there's no real assumptions that's identified whether that considers the current millage rate or even in the future. And that's the other thing. These bonds are based off of 30-year repayments. So certainly there's not enough information here for anybody to sit here and suggest that it costs you $300. So I just think it's, number one, at a minimum, misleading. I'm not a staff member. I'm elected by the people, and the First Amendment right gives me the opportunity to speak freely. So I certainly support the police and fire. To the point that was made by one of the speakers, you're spot on. We don't even have clean water, and I don't know how this slipped, right? But I would hope that somebody from administration can speak now, because this is our first public meeting since January 19th, how we have a huge issue with our utility department where well 14 tested positive for fecal indicator on June 27, 2023. And here it is now, almost 8 months later. And now the public notice goes out. Let me read specifically what it says. And this is why I don't take that foolishness from these people. Because, like, you think about, I don't get sick too often, but there was a time over the summer when I got sick and nobody really knows why. Well, here's why. Here could be a good indicator of why. This is why you don't have one person running all three departments. So you can talk about how great he is, Ms. Bram. I hold people accountable because whether you know it or not, people live and die for the decisions we make. And I seen that last Thursday when I seen a 7-year-old kid walking completely lost across a 6-lane state road highway, and I had to stop and pick him up because he was just completely displaced. That's a whole nother school district issue that I'll be addressing. But this just bothers the heck out of me, how we can get up and praise people for doing all of this foolishness. It's foolishness. Like, how do we sit here when we got probably 24 people that make 6 figures in this organization, and we got something like a simple notification that's federally and state required that doesn't go out until 7 months later, especially when it involves our water supply. On June 27, 2023, Utility Special District staff collected a sample from well 14. The sample tested positive for E. coli, which is a fecal indicator, or FIB. Water from well 14, including all the other groundwater wells, were treated at the water treatment plant by filtration and disinfected prior to being sent to the customer. Our system failed to notify the state drinking water program that E. coli bacteria was detected in a groundwater source sample. USD is required to notify the state of this information within 24 hours of when we learned of this situation. Admittingly, and this is where I'm surprised for the city, they actually acknowledged that they failed to do so. But what does that really mean?
Councilman McCoy, I do apologize. We do not have a quorum, so we do have to adjourn the meeting.
I'm afraid you're wrong, because that only applies for official business. Now, we've done taking care of official business. If you choose to walk out, then that's on you. But I would really insist that I be allowed to continue my comments.
Well, I do want to let you continue your comments, and that was actually why I wanted to get clarity.
Okay,
just
so I'm
from
gonna go ahead and finish, and you can go over there and talk, because that's not gonna happen.
But Councilman
Our
McCoy, you
system
can
failed to notify the state drinking water program that E. coli bacteria was detected in a ground source
Councilman McCoy,
sample.
respectfully, I'm
USD is
going to
required
allow
to notify the
Councilman
state
McCoy.
of this information
I'm
within
going to allow
24
for you to
hours of when we
continue,
learned of
Councilman
the
McCoy,
situation,
but
but we failed
respectfully,
to
can
do
we get an
so.
opinion from our
Additionally,
legal?
we failed to collect additional samples from well 14 within 24 hours as required by state and federal regulations. Because of this, the water quality was unknown during the dates of June 27th and June 28th. Per the regulations, 5 confirmation samples are required to be taken within 24 hours of the learning of the positive sample. However, after receiving confirmation from the laboratory of the positive samples on June 28th, 2023, well 14 was immediately taken out of service. Confirmation samples taken from the distribution system in June and routine samples during the months of July and August showed no bacteriological contamination of water from customer taps. Appropriate corrective action was taken to resolve the contamination problem at well 14 on August 23rd, 2023. Although this situation does not create a risk to the public health at this time, as our value utility customer, you have a right to know what happened and what action was taken to correct the situation. But that doesn't really tell me nothing if we're only going to address this 7 months later. So, I mean, I don't have any pause about when a resident stands up here and says that we shouldn't be building all of these high rises when we can't even provide clean water. And even in the event that I expect accidents or these kind of occurrences to happen, but I just don't understand how do we fail at not even notifying. Like, we've been through a whole litany of 7 years worth of consent orders. And it's like water touches every single person, whether you live in this city, whether you work in this city. I mean, we even provide water for Palm Beach Shores and then even out to the Gramercy Park community. So, you know, for me, I mean, they're going to come up here. Look, he's already teed up to tell you some foolishness. But the fact is, nobody should be sitting here waiting 7 months for an explanation about why there's fecal matter contamination in the city's well water supply. And if you think that I'm being irrational, well, damn, I'm mad. I got a 9-year-old, and that's not okay for anybody, no matter what age it is. But the mere fact that this get covered up, somebody should be held to account. But we talk all of this malarkey, and that's nice for me saying something else that I would much rather say. I would rather say the word that's inside that the fecal contamination came from. But, you know, praise them how great we're doing, but at the same time, Warrior Palm is always accepting applications. Kitchen's Funeral Home is always accepting applications. People are dying, but we get up here and talk about this foolishness, and we'll talk about all this foolishness that don't even matter. So, like, talk about the real, and this is what a special meeting should be called about. And I would encourage you to vote no on the parks bond, because you can't even have any kind of city if you don't even have clean water. Parks is not a necessity. In fact, I counted today, we have 14 parks and 2 recreation facilities. Actually, 4 recreation buildings. Callaway, Wells, Barracuda Bay, Lindsay Davis, and actually Brooks. So, I mean, and actually we do have another park that's on the way. So, I don't understand where we seem to forget what's important here as elected officials. I mean, for me, it's the quality of life, and certainly water quality ought to be the first on everybody's list. And that comes before City Hall. And I wouldn't even say thank you, Mr. Chair, for trying to stop me.
Councilman, I respectfully let you go on your soapbox to address the concerns because you're speaking for the people. My concern was only to make sure that legal opined on if we can continue the meeting, because I do have similar comments and concerns to address in a public setting. So respectfully, for future reference, since I did give you that same courtesy and respect to continue and not adjourn the meeting, as I do have the right as the chair, can you please respectfully allow for me to ask the questions necessary as the chairman? Because I think that was completely disrespectful, but I allowed for you to go off because it's definitely important to address the issues that you've been hearing in the community that you speak about. But can I please serve as the chairman? All I want to do is have our city attorney opine on if we can continue to keep this meeting going. And if we as a council decide to continue, we still have that right. But do not interrupt me when I'm trying to lead as the chairman, if that is in my right. Attorney Nguyen.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
We're currently in a meeting and we do not have a quorum. We're not taking official action, so if a motion is made, it cannot be done. We're still televised to the public and we're still in an open meeting. Are we allowed to continue this meeting or do we have to adjourn?
It would be my recommendation that you adjourn.
Councilman McCoy, is there anything else you have before I adjourn this meeting without even addressing my comments as well? Mayor, is there any other comments that you have before we adjourn this meeting? I will see the council, the board next week, and I will address my concerns at our next public meeting. This meeting is adjourned.